In a small village nestled deep within the rolling hills of Eastern Africa, lived a pastor named Reverend Kwesi. He was a gifted preacher, known for delivering sermons that moved hearts and stirred spirits. His words resonated with the people, and his reputation as a healer spread far beyond the village. Those who were sick came to him, some with ailments doctors couldn't cure. With a simple prayer and a gentle touch, Reverend Kwesi would ask for divine intervention, and many of the afflicted found relief. But despite his good works, the villagers did not love Reverend Kwesi. They whispered behind his back, calling him names and casting doubt on his intentions. It puzzled the pastor. After all, he did not seek wealth, and he lived humbly. His small church was barely more than a thatched-roofed hut with wooden benches, yet he continued to serve the people faithfully. One rainy season, a severe drought swept through the village. The crops withered, the wells ran dry, and hunger began to spread. In desperation, the villagers turned to Reverend Kwesi for help. He prayed fervently for rain, spending nights on his knees, pleading with God for mercy. When the skies opened, and rain finally poured down on the thirsty land, the villagers reluctantly acknowledged his role in ending the drought. But rather than gratitude, envy festered among them. They wondered why Kwesi's prayers were answered when their own had not been. Rumors began to spread that the pastor had used dark powers to heal the sick and bring the rain. Some whispered that he had made pacts with spirits in the forest, while others claimed he was a sorcerer masquerading as a man of God. These accusations wounded Reverend Kwesi deeply, but he continued to pray for his community, even for those who spoke ill of him. One evening, a woman named Amina, whose child had been healed of a high fever by the pastor, came to him in tears. "Reverend, why do they hate you? You have done nothing but good for us," she said. Kwesi smiled sadly, his face lined with weariness. "My dear Amina, sometimes people fear what they do not understand. They see the works of God and mistake them for the hands of men. But it is not my place to be loved by all, only to serve where I am needed." He gave her a gentle pat on the shoulder and sent her home with a prayer. Not long after, a plague of locusts swept across the village, devouring crops and leaving the fields barren. The people were terrified. They gathered at the pastor's church, desperate for a miracle. Kwesi stood before them, raising his hands to the sky and praying for deliverance. As he prayed, a strong wind came from the mountains, driving the locusts away. The villagers watched in awe as the dark cloud of insects scattered into the distance. Yet, even then, some among them muttered that he had caused the plague himself, just so he could be their savior. Reverend Kwesi heard their words but said nothing. He continued to pray for their safety and well-being, even as their suspicion and resentment weighed heavily on his heart. Years passed, and Kwesi grew old. His hair turned white, and his steps slowed. But he never abandoned his post at the church. One evening, during a terrible storm, a landslide threatened to bury the village. The pastor, frail as he was, led a group of villagers to higher ground, saving many lives. When the danger had passed, the people saw him standing in the rain, his hands still clasped in prayer. In that moment, they realized how much he had sacrificed for them, how tirelessly he had served, despite their unkindness. As they knelt beside him in the mud, they began to weep, asking for his forgiveness and God's forgiveness. Reverend Kwesi, with a gentle smile on his face, placed his hands on their heads and blessed them. He knew that love could not be forced, but through his patience and faithfulness, he had earned a place in their hearts. And in the end, the villagers understood that his power was not in magic or sorcery, but in the strength of his faith and the depth of his love.